We're
Hey,
back.
we're back. Another Friday installment of Dillon in the Dock.
Oh man, how happy are you? The week's kind of over. It's not necessarily over for us, but
We still have a show to go tonight, dude.
how are you feeling about the weekend coming up tomorrow? I'll put it that way.
Dude, it's my wedding anniversary. I'm pumped.
That's
I'm
awesome.
pumped.
That's
I'm pumped.
congratulations. That's so great.
Yeah, it's weird because my wife and I got married in December, but we had a wedding in July.
Oh,
So we
okay.
did that thing where we had a kid before we were married, and insurance demanded that we were married. So we became married to take care of that.
Gotcha.
So this is our 7.5-year wedding anniversary. In December would be 8.
Okay.
I honestly couldn't tell you the date in December. I don't remember the exact date that the court says, but I do remember the date of our wedding, and that's when we celebrate. So
Oh, okay. The wedding you celebrate, not the actual
yeah.
legalized part.
Yeah. So like technically it's 7 years that we've been married. In December it would be 8. So I joke. So it's 7.5 instead of 7, but it's our 7th anniversary of our wedding, our actual wedding.
Okay.
So yeah. There you go. There's a little fun background. It wasn't a shotgun
Congratulations.
wedding. We wanted to get married. It just came at a different pace than we were necessarily expecting.
Yeah.
So yeah. Welcome everybody. Love seeing you in here. This is one of our favorite activities of the week. Speaking for Ryan. Sorry, Ryan. Words in your mouth.
This is the 5th one this week. The 5th live.
That is. Yes, it is the 5th live this week. 4 we did in the evening. We got one in the afternoon. We got 3 more in the evening to go. So,
dude,
what's up?
I'm excited for these. They have been pumping me up all week.
Good. I hope it pumps the audience up as well.
Yeah.
So for those of you that are new, this is Dillon in the Dock, where we talk recovery and relationships and everything in between and where those things meet. So
hell yeah,
let's talk about it. You want to get into it? It's my turn, isn't it?
It is your turn.
Okay. So my name's Dillon Reed. I'm a professional recovery coach, which means I help get you from your miserable state of being an alcoholic to your desired state, being sober, thriving, accomplishing goals, being the dad that you always dreamed of, and the husband that your wife deserves. So that's what this is all about. Go ahead and your turn, man.
Hey, I'm Dr. Ryan. I am a professional relationship coach, an expert in relationship development and interpersonal communication. And I help couples create thriving, unshakable relationships in 60 days. That's the goal.
That's what's up.
We get you in, get you going, and crush it out.
Yeah, I'm gonna try something. Don't get mad at me. Hey, I figured it out.
Oh,
I don't really care who's on which side, but I just wanted to.
Okay.
So we can mix it around throughout the show and just get us all confused about which
that'd
finger to use to point to the other guy.
Like, hey, Jacqueline, how's it going?
I had to find out. Okay. So today we have something to look forward to. I will be covering dopamine fasting on the show. We do not like to cover our initial segment first thing in the show. We like to get into some of your questions. One of our favorite parts of the show is the question and answer segment, which is pretty much the whole entire show. So if you have any questions about recovery, if you have any questions about relationships or anything in between, we have a very goal-driven program. So if you have questions about growth, personal development, self-care, self-love, anything like that, that's something that we can handle for you. And like I said, we'll be doing a segment at some point during the show where I will cover dopamine and what dopamine fasting is all about and why it might be useful in your life. So there you go, man.
I'm excited to hear about it, man.
Dude,
dopamine's a cool thing.
It is. It's a whole thing, dude. The more we start to understand it, the more we realize we don't understand much about it, which is cool. That's my favorite part about it, I think. Brain science, neuroscience is cutting edge. It's new stuff. And it's like the operating system for our whole entire reality, which I think is why I love it so much, because it just seems important.
It's a little important.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe what your brain does and what your experience is like is valuable to you in your life. I don't know.
Yeah.
Man. So So do we want to get into some questions? Guys, if you've got any questions, let us know what you've got. Also, it's also fun to know. There you go. It's
Also, it's
fun to know
also
where you're from. So if you wouldn't mind dropping a comment, letting us know where you're from, that'd be great. So you want the first question?
what do you want to jump into? Yeah.
What are you doing? Let's hear what you got, bud.
Let's pull one of these up.
Yeah, we have, for those of you that are new here, we have questions that are always loaded up because we can't answer all the questions that we get on the show. Try our best. And if we don't get them, they get loaded up in the hopper and we get to them. But we always prioritize questions that are asked live. So there you go.
Yeah. So please throw those questions and comments down and let us know. Otherwise, we're just gonna talk to you about random things.
Those late nights can be tough. I definitely understand that, Jacqueline.
Oh, we're right there with you, Jacqueline. You've been there for, I think, every one of our lives this week, which is awesome.
Yes.
And
yes.
yeah, we've been awake through it too. I mean, I didn't get to sleep until midnight or something last night.
I took my mag threonate and my L-theanine. I don't know if you noticed it, but like at the end of the show, I'm taking my sleep stack.
Yeah.
So that was helpful. I really try not to use electronics right before bed, which this is immediately breaking a rule.
Yeah.
Because here we are when we're doing it at, 10, 11 o'clock at night. But I found that it's created a bad habit from previous habits where then I'm on my phone when I'm in my bed, which I normally don't do.
After this, you're on your phone?
Yeah. So I'll crawl in bed and normally I plug my phone and put it on the nightstand and I'm done. But like my brain's still turning. So I will like idly, almost unconsciously, I feel like I'm trying to like still keep my brain occupied. I'll be on my phone. So I recognized that last night. I was like, dude, this is 4 nights in a row that you're doing a thing you don't do. What's going on? So tonight I'm going to make darn sure that I don't mess with my phone.
Dude, so, that self-awareness creeped up and saved you.
Well, dude, that's what this is all about. That's what the show's about. That's what my program's about. Your program's about. Thank God. So I was able to identify a bad habit that I was developing, and take care of it. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Do you because on my phone, I turn on I think it's night mode where it gets rid of the blue light because it's the blue light that is really messing with our senses. I know it's all light, but blue light is specifically really bad.
So I don't know, man. I mean, I talked to my eye doctor about it because I have blue light contact lenses. Okay.
Oh.
So, because like I used to, I don't have the frames right here, but I have like the yellow, blue light blockers like that, right? Yeah. Because we live on our computers. Like that's just the life of what we do. So I was rocking those, and then she was like, "Oh, they add them to contacts." I was like, "Well, what about like daily life? Is that going to mess with it?" She's like, "No, it honestly, like the blue light thing." She explained to me that the blue light thing's really trumped up to sell products, essentially. Like yes, the blue light does have an impact, but you can't filter enough of it out to it's like basically she's saying it's like negligible because you would have to like not even see that spectrum of light to truly negate it, which is not something you could do because could you imagine like the way that colors interact? If you remove blue from your whole vision, all of a sudden the world's pretty wonky looking, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I just that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but anyways.
That's all right. No, it does. It does. It's that it's that being self-aware, but also being knowledgeable about what's going on, what your tolerances are, and what's safe for you in your self-care program.
We'll kind of cover, and I didn't intend for this, but we'll kind of cover why it's a good idea for me to be staying away from my phone when I'm going to bed when we talk about dopamine fasting a little bit later in the segment. Because it has everything to do with that good old teeter-totter that I'm going to talk about today.
Awesome. So, I have some thoughts on the relationship side too.
Hey, so do we have does it look like Jacqueline kind of has a question there?
Yeah, it does. You want to hit it?
Pop it up there, man.
Yeah.
So it is true. You mentioned previously about just having, or maybe it should say, is it that just having the bottle in your hand got rid of retching? I experienced that feeling just planning my binge weekends before the drinking became daily during COVID. It's 100% true. It was the weirdest experience of my life to I actually was talking to a client about this today. I'm not making that up. Earlier this morning, we were talking about how I could, because he's kind of going through a tough time right now. He's on his way to getting sober. And we were talking about the retching. Like, you don't even have anything to get rid of and your body's trying to make you vomit, right? And I was telling him, like, yeah, if I just went and got a bottle, that would go away. And he previously was a heroin user. And he said he would be dope sick and then just get the needle and like everything's better. So it's all about, guys, it's anticipatory dopamine. Like that's really where it's at. You're on the downward side of the teeter totter. And if you can do something to trick your brain into thinking that it's going to get what it wants, it pulls you out of fight or flight, because dopamine does have something to do with the fight or flight state. So again, we'll get into that a little later. But so there you go. Yeah, I mean, I don't recommend that somebody, put yourself in the position to test that experience, but it's real, and I'm not alone apparently in that experience. So
if that's the case, can you switch things? Like, for instance, instead of like thinking about the bottle in your hand, gives you that dopamine, that preemptive dopamine you're talking about. Can you switch it to other things that increase dopamine? Like, I know I bring this up a lot, but like my ice baths, just thinking about it increases, like doing it more and repetitively. Can you replace kind of those preemptive dopamine things with something else
so
beneficial?
Yeah. There's a little problem in it, in that, like, so I did my damnedest to research this for you guys, but I couldn't find and it's probably because the number doesn't actually exist, what baseline dopamine units is. Like, what you should have floating around in your mind all the time. There's not really a number, because we're all different as far as brain chemistry, right?
Yeah.
All I could find instead was like, they are able to measure, if you take a substance, it'll do about this much. But that even proves that there's no real baseline to go off of, because it's like alcohol and nicotine is like something like 100 to 200 units after consuming that substance.
Yeah.
Meth is something like 1,200. Cocaine's like 150 to 400. So even seeing those variances lets us know there's no real like baseline's 10, right?
Yeah.
So the best way to think about it, and we'll go into the teeter-totter stuff a little later, but think about a teeter-totter. That's how dopamine works. Flippy floppy, right? So when you drink, it's like putting a 200-pound person on the teeter-totter, pushing down, right? And if you're trying to think about like something that makes you happy, unfortunately, it's not a 200-pound man. It's something else. That's why substances are so destructive, is because it's exogenous dopamine. We experience a level of dopamine that's beyond anything naturally occurring. That's where we get into trouble. So, I mean, over time, if you went through the process of dopamine fasting, like I'm going to talk about a little bit today, you would be able to like imagine being, something cool, and then not have to maybe drink. But ideally, if you dopamine fast, you should be far enough away from alcohol at that point to start making conscious decision to stay sober. So there you
Gotcha.
go. Does that get to
Yeah.
what you're asking?
Yeah.
Cool. So why don't you hit us with something you got, man?
I'm going to hit you with this one because I've thought about this a lot, because the love languages, it drives me nuts, for one, because there's really no research to support anything. And he says that in the book. Everybody just kind of dispels it. It hasn't been validated through empirical studies or anything. This
Coffee
is just
table science, dude.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's good. Like, you should have an idea of what your partner. So how does the love language concept influence the way couples communicate and express affection in their relationship? This is a double-edged sword. There's what I see are the positives, but the way everybody takes it becomes a huge negative and actually hurts the relationship.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you can follow along, so we have this thing, we have the love language that everybody's going to. And they're like, this is my love language. This is my partner's love language. And that's the only thing they focus on. That is the only thing they focus on. They should be doing this for me. I'm doing this for them. They should be doing this for me. Here's where it becomes an expectation, which is very poor. This
Yeah.
cannot, you can't make this an expectation in your relationship. I expect you to show me words of affirmation every single day. That's not how it works.
I should laugh. I'm thinking about like, I don't know, man. I'm not disparaging love language because I know it's a thing, but in a way, it reminds me of like, oh, I'm an Aries, you know, like I'm only compatible with I'm an Aries, so I do Aries things, and it's like that's just not life, guys. Like, you know, there's more to it than just
Yeah.
your symbol, you know,
Like if you,
or
yeah,
your love language, right?
yeah. Like, and if you look at the love languages, we all like all five love languages. It's just we prefer to get more of one of them more often
Yeah, or give one
or
of them
give.
more often, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why would you just expect one? Why wouldn't you try to? And here's where the expectation comes in. Why wouldn't you just try to give all five to your partner on a regular and continuous basis, but knowing that they like one more than the other, so you do that one a little bit more often.
Why do you do this? Why do you do this to us? You know, it's like I'm like sitting here, brains kind of melting a little bit, going like, he's just telling me to be present and really just love on my wife the way that
Yeah.
I promised her I would and like
Yeah.
did in the beginning, or she wouldn't be here, right? Like when you're like that master marketer salesman trying to get your foot in the door. I mean, you're practicing extra love languages people don't even talk about yet, right?
Yeah. There's, and I think that's why it irritates me so much is they put so much real estate into one thing that they read about. Like, this is the one thing that'll make me happy. No, communicating with your partner is going to make you happy. Increasing levels of intimacy are going to make you feel better about your partner. Becoming more self aware, inducing a self care plan, continuing to grow. All of these are going to happen. These are like your love language is just kind of that cherry on top.
That
But
makes
everybody's
sense.
focusing on the cherry instead of everything else.
I mean, that makes total sense. We fixate on a thing, right? I mean, it's kind of
Yeah,
just what we do, unfortunately.
it
Um,
is. And it's unfortunate. So I I have two thoughts on the love languages.
yeah, let's
One,
hear it.
I think they're useful.
Okay.
I think they're a useful way to express affection to your partner. I think they're a terrible way to create false or incomplete expectations of your partner. So you can either use it for good or as an expectation and it diminishes the relationship.
So it's like how a hammer is both a tool and a weapon.
Yeah.
Like if you're using it right, it's super useful. And if
Yeah.
you're not, like it's not, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes
So you
sense, man.
just got to be careful.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's still it's utility to put in your tool belt, make use
Hmm.
of.
Yeah.
Helps us kind of I guess the reason I think things like that can be useful is that um it does make things a little more accessible. Like I mean, I'm not 100. You're way more of an IPC guy, relational guy than I was. You know, I was
Hmm.
more mass media, that kind of stuff. But it's like, I feel like maybe it distills some of the interpersonal communication. I should have just like abbreviate interpersonal communication theories. Maybe distills a couple of them and puts them together into like, here's this way that we communicate. Here's this way that we. Is that something? Am I off base there? Onto something there at all?
Um, I, I,
You can tell me I'm wrong. I can take it.
I wouldn't say it's not necessarily they're putting different theoretical frameworks. They're
Okay.
putting,
I guess I'm just saying, is it like, it feels like it's more distilled than some of the more complex theories that you're going to read
oh,
in interpersonal communication.
yeah,
Like it
because
makes it a little bit easier.
because it's just this guy found these things useful.
Yeah.
He
So,
didn't test it. He didn't do anything. He just said these are kind of
yeah. Yeah. So
what
what I was
work.
saying is like, so instead of like breaking down why acts of service as a love language works, because you could, I mean, you could go into the framework, all these other
Oh yeah.
theories as to how it functions, right? it just makes it to where everybody can kind of grab a hold of it. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that makes sense. I make breakfast for my wife in bed. She's excited. She loves it. I love doing it. It works
Yeah.
out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I didn't mean to derail you, but I was just my
you're good. You're good.
brain doing brain things.
So there's end of rant on love languages.
Well, I appreciate it,
Take
because
it-
it makes sense.
Take
Taken
it
to
for
the
what
nth
you will.
degree.
Tell me I'm wrong if you want.
You're wrong.
Challenge me on it.
Here's where you're wrong.
Okay.
Not at all. So for those of you that are fresh in the show right now, this is Dr. Ryan Rasner. He is a relationship expert, professional relationship coach. He's fielding all the relationship questions. I mean, I know about relationships, but darn sure don't consider myself an expert. Or my relationship at home would probably be even a little better than it already is. And then I'm Dillon Reed. I'm a professional recovery coach. I help people go from drunk to sober and stay sober, because that's the hard part. We're taking your questions in the audience today. So if you've got questions about relationships, you've got questions about recovery, drop them in the comments and we will get to them on the show.
Yeah.
Speaking of, we've got one. So what do you think?
Let's hear it, Nicole.
So yeah, go ahead. Why don't you bring it up there and read it to us?
All right. Nicole says, this is for you. Did you get sober with medication?
I didn't. I don't have anything against it. In fact, I recommend it to almost every client that I have. And when I say recommend it, I suggest it as an option. I cannot recommend it. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist, right? Sorry. But the thing is say, because there are people, there's this school of thought that if you use some sort of medication to get sober, then you did it wrong, which is insane to me, because that's like telling somebody that if they have anxiety, they can't be taking Lexapro or Xanax or whatever they might want to take for whatever they have going on. That's crazy. I mean, if you've got something going on with your head that can be fixed by taking a pill, or at least alleviated or helped in some way, then you should do that. I have clients that are doing great with naltrexone. People in I've got a private anonymous, it's the sobriety survival server on Discord. If anybody wants that, DM me. Anyways, there's people in there that are on all sorts of different medications that have helped them along the way. So I'm saying, if you can afford to drink, you can afford to go to your doctor. I should just make that a soundbite, because I say it enough. Go to your doctor, talk to him about your options, and make use of them, because all those medications are going to be better for you than drinking, period. Like,
yeah,
that's where I got it.
Ding, 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 ding.
Boom. There you go. There's my answer. I hope that answered it, Nicole. If you need like a follow-up, let me know. Hey.
So Jess, we'll get to this right now because it follows. Jess, I was told that by more than one person, but the Dishuram has been a huge help. I don't know what that is.
So that's the like Antabuse. So that one actually will make you like sick if you drink alcohol. Naltrexone is alcohol cessation drug, so it's supposed to make you have less cravings. Whereas that Antabuse, like you pretty much get to experience like an immediate hangover withdrawal if you drink. It's good for some people. It's not good for other people. The one thing that I guess I didn't mention that I think is worth mentioning, you have to take these things for them to work. That's the other kind of complex part about it, is like, you really do want to quit. You have to want to quit because you have to take those meds. Otherwise, I mean, there's people that are court ordered. They have to take it. And they also make implants. They are kind of expensive, but they do make implants that you can get. And they're slowly for a year. You don't have a choice, right? Yeah. So there you go.
So is that it?
I think that's it for right now, man.
I just don't know. I don't know too much about the medication thing. Like, I've heard of Antabuse.
Yeah.
I think that was like in the 90s. A lot of people in AA were taking that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know how we had that question about Wellbutrin as a dopamine agonist last night. For those of you that weren't at the show, somebody was asking about Wellbutrin to help with cravings because it's a dopamine agonist, and it's an antidepressant as well, which led me into a giant rabbit hole. It turns out and it was actually super helpful. I found a peer-reviewed article from the National Institute of Health about every single prescription used for alcohol use disorder.
Oh, cool.
Like, hey, I got the whole lexicanum on what's going on here. So that's kind of cool.
Nice.
But I'll wait till tonight to get the Wellbutrin thing because I do want to address it, and
Yeah.
I would hope Kathy will be there, so I'll probably be able to drop that knowledge bomb. But
Yeah.
yeah, so we'll get into it later.
Cool. And those of you that don't know what he's talking about, we're going to be live again tonight.
10 Central.
9 Mountain.
Yep.
So you can catch another one.
Yeah. You get a double dose of us today if you want it. If you can handle it, that is.
Then Saturday and Sunday we'll be on 9 to 10, 10 to 11.
Yep. So cool. Did you want to hit another question? Or you want me to hit one, or
let's hit one of yours. Let's hit one of yours. What do you want to hit?
Okay, we'll hit one of mine, and then we'll hit one of yours, and then I think I should probably get to the dopamine fasting. Yeah. I don't want everyone to think like we're gonna make them wait their whole entire lives. So I've got, how do you get past the memory of the euphoric feeling of alcohol or drugs? And this is kind of an interesting one because I don't want people to come from a place of denial. I do not want us to pretend as if alcohol was always some big scary monster, because that's a lie. And lying to yourself is not being self-aware. Like, we need to be able to come to terms with that. Yes, at some point it did give us some sort of superpower. It wouldn't have. If it wouldn't have, we would not be where we are. Like, that's just a reality. Yeah. If it always sucked, you wouldn't keep drinking. You definitely see that with people that have problems metabolizing alcohol. So ethanol to like acetaldehyde, as that like builds up, it'll make you really sick. Some people cannot metabolize it in the same way. They don't drink. They don't become alcoholics because it sucks, right? Also, none of us plan to be alcoholics. Like, I think we should also just tip our hat to that. So when it comes to getting past the memory of the euphoric feeling, journal. Pros and cons all the time. Do it daily if you need to. Every time you want to drink, write down why you think you want to drink and what's going to happen. Like, fast forward the tape to what your life looks like once you've had that first drink, and then you're into 10, because you're not having one drink. You're drinking the case, whatever you're picking up, right? So it's all about self-awareness. It's about being mindful. It's about truly coming to grips with, hey, yeah, that's a memory. Yeah, it was euphoric. Well, I've been in a couple of abusive relationships with people throughout my life too, other than alcohol. We're talking actual humans here.
Yeah.
And there was definitely a euphoric feeling at some point. Some of them I made the mistake of dating again because I believed in the euphoric feeling. And then you get back with them, you find out that that's just not the case. And alcohol is no different. So it's a matter of reframing, shifting our perspective, and accepting that, yeah, it was euphoric at one point, but that's just not where we're at today and won't ever be at again. So
yeah,
that's it. I mean,
I don't know if I don't know if it would help. Like, I've talked about this before, when I tell people or help them get over their breakups when they're having a really difficult time. Like, that's one of the things they talk about. If you listen to them, they constantly talk about all the positive things. So similarly, the euphoric kind of thoughts. And you need to switch that mind frame to, I tell them, I want you to think about all the negative things that happened in that relationship that led to this breakup. Because when we break up with something, alcohol, another person, we tend to just think about those positive things for whatever reason. And you need to switch that mindset to, hey, no, I need to think about the negative things, those really crappy situations that happened, all the negative stuff that happened. So I think similarly from a relationship side, I think that would help too, kind of like you were saying.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. It's weird how many people have a very negative mindset, focus on all the worst things that can happen, all that kind of stuff. Man, when it comes to something that's a habit and that we're addicted to, we will completely forget about how many times we burned our hand on the stove and we'll just keep reaching through the fire. It is so strange to me.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. Well, I'm starting to understand it. We'll put it that way. I do understand it, but I don't understand it, right? If I totally understood it, I would just say the right thing to you and we'd all be sober, but it's just not a thing. So let's take a question from you, since we don't have one in the comments, and then I'll go ahead and get into dopamine fasting after that. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah, we can do that. We'll go with this one. How can we effectively handle financial matters and create a shared financial goals for the future together?
Dude, I want this one. Let me know what's up.
I like I like this one.
Yeah.
Partly because I mean my brother is right across the hall. He's a wealth advisor. And the number one thing I tell everybody to do is to get with a financial advisor and get a financial plan in order. That is the number one thing you need to do. I mean, in my program, I offer that as a service to them. Hey, I'll pay for your financial plan, because they're usually like $500 to get a financial plan professionally done. So it's expensive, but it puts you on track together. Next thing you need to do is you need to talk to each other about what your shared goals are. Be it, I mean, your financial goals are the thing with financial goals is they're going to fall into so many categories: the career category, um, the professional development, the personal growth, um, oh, all of it. It's going to fall
All
into
of it.
nearly all of it. I was thinking spiritual. I was like, no, it doesn't really fall into the spiritual goals aspect. But the financial thing falls into so many categories. You have to be on the same page. Like, if our goal is to, right, we're trying to reconnect, we're trying to go on a date a week, we need to be on the same page financially. Hey, do our finances allow for this? Do they allow for us to get a babysitter once a week and to go out for a couple hours? I mean, that's probably $40 for the babysitter, right? For the couple hours, or I don't know. I'm assuming it's around 20
Depends
bucks
on
an
how
hour.
many kids you have. Depends on how
Okay.
many kids you have.
Okay.
But my wife and I just had this talk today. I was like, the reason we don't go on a date weekly is because it's currently cost prohibitive. We have 4 kids.
Yeah.
It makes for an expensive date. But yeah. So, anyways, continue.
So the other thing you do, like, say, so that's a great example. It's cost prohibitive. This
Yeah.
does not fit with our joint financial goals for the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right there, it fits together. So what it does is it forces you to think kind of outside the box. What can we do? What does date night really mean? Well, it means we're connecting. That means maybe we need to, what was that? My girlfriend just brought these books up that we're going to get. The adventure challenge for couples, or the date night adventure book from Amazon. Maybe we need to do some of that here at the house, right? Kids are in bed one night from, say your kids go to bed at 9. At 9 o'clock, our date night begins. We choose a thing from the adventure pack. We cook dinner together, right? It's a date night. It's not about spending money. It's not about going out. It's about connecting. So you kind of have to reframe what you're thinking. And that's how you get your shared financial goals for the future together, is you get on track with your individual goals together.
Dude, that makes total sense. You got a pen handy? You want to take a note?
Yeah.
Dude, you should do a segment at some point talking about like joint bank accounts. Because I
Okay.
know that that's like a complex matter in a lot of relationships among the friends that I have, whether they do or don't, and all those kinds of things. So if you've got anything you could speak on about that, that would be cool.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd drop that. I
I
was
can
just thinking
definitely
about
put
that.
something together for that.
I think that would be cool. I hope I didn't interrupt. You seemed
No,
like you were
no,
at the
you
end.
didn't interrupt that. So that's kind of what it is.
Okay.
That's how you handle financial matters, is you align your goals, which means you have to think about what your goals are, what their goals are, where those goals intersect, right? And what
Yeah.
those mean for the future. Do we want to retire at 60? Okay, cool. We need X amount of dollars to retire at 60. How do we get there? And you break that down small. This is what we
Yeah.
need to do every month to get there. We need to be socking away to our investor $1,500 a month.
Yeah.
Okay, what does that leave us left with? This is what we have.
Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, actually taking an honest appraisal of where we are and where we want to go.
Yeah,
Which, a lot of us don't want to do. So it's like,
yeah,
dang it, I don't want to look at that.
yeah,
So yeah, I appreciate that, man.
yeah.
Um, should I do the thing?
Yeah, let's hear your thing.
So first, I'm going to do this thing. That's Dr. Ryan. He's a relationship coach. He will most definitely help you out, whether you're doing it okay in your relationship or it's pretty bad. That's what he's
Yeah.
here for. And I'm here to help you get sober and stay sober. So we do take questions. For those of you that are new, fresh to the audience, we take questions from the audience about recovery, addiction, sobriety, relationships, personal development, growth, whatever's in between there, where those intersect. That's what we've been doing for 16 episodes now. So it's 16 weeks now. So we're all about it. Same time, do it at 3:00 p.m. Central every Friday. So I'm going to go ahead and hop into we do a thing where each of us has about a 10-15 minute segment each week, in addition to the questions, to create some continuity between episodes. So it's my turn, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the dopamine fasting, or as my down under clients say, dopamine. So we're going to go ahead and get into this. It is super duper complex and scientific. I'm doing my best to make it as accessible as possible. Because truth be told, the neuroscientists don't even truly grasp it at this. I mean, they do better than they ever have, but they're frequently remodeling the house of your brain and how it functions. So first of all, what is dopamine? It is a neurotransmitter. It is also a hormone, and it's also a neurohormone. So it's like all of the things in your brain. And really what it does is it's a messenger boy. Let's see, the best way to understand it. It's relaying messages from different areas in your brain to other areas in your brain, and then also throughout the body. Okay. Which is pretty cool. It's not just hanging out in your head, but it is produced in your head. Okay. It plays a role in movement, memory, attention, sleep, and arousal, not sexual arousal, like being awake arousal, lactation, behavior, and cognition. I didn't know the lactation one, by the way. I was like, what? But it would make sense as we start to unravel what dopamine does as to why it plays a huge role in that. Mood, learning, reward, and motivation. And that's what we're really going to focus on for the most part today, is the reward and motivation aspect of dopamine. So we have different levels of dopamine throughout the day, throughout our lives, for all sorts of different reasons, activities we're taking part in. Some of us, unfortunately, might, for some sort of chemical imbalance, have lower dopamine naturally. There's different dopamine agonists we can take that help us feel better, that kind of stuff. If you have the right mix, you're feeling good and motivated, you're feeling alert, and you're feeling focused. Okay. That's ideal. Okay. If you have low dopamine, you kind of have the opposite. You're tired, you're unmotivated, and you experience mood swings pretty heavily. There's some symptoms that come along with that. You are unhappy. You have memory loss. You have sleeplessness. So it's interesting to understand, like, this is a little different than having depression, because frequently people that are depressed do a lot of sleeping. Somebody that has had low dopamine is just going to have trouble sleeping. It's kind of strange. And a low sex drive. So that's why I had to make sure that we understood sleep and arousal was different than the other kind of arousal that a lot of people think about. And then there's such a thing as high dopamine. Okay. And this happens on occasion. There's really not super anything wrong with it. You're going to feel euphoric, full of energy. I mean, it's that natural high. Some of us get it while we're running. You do get it when you're having sex, those kinds of things. And it results in sleeplessness, which is, there you go, increased aggression and poor impulse control. Okay. I'll kind of talk.
Increased dopamine leads to these things.
Yes.
Okay.
Strange, huh? Strange. Yeah. So like, I think about it like this, because we're going to cover like what dopamine does right after this. So it's a pretty decent time to segue about this. You have increased aggression because part of dopamine's role is to defend ourselves, self-defense, and protect what's ours, protect ourselves, protect family, whatever it might be. So heightened dopamine means like, I'll fight a dude, right? Like that, it makes sense. The poor impulse control has to do with the fact that our higher faculties, the cortical regions of our brain, are where we're thinking about the future and we're doing higher thinking. Dopamine doesn't hang out there too much. So it's going back to the fight or flight, eat, sleep, have kids self-defense kind of concept. So
Yeah.
you are going to just impulsively defend what is yours, right? So what does dopamine do? And why do we care about this kind of stuff when it comes to alcohol use? So dopamine was previously associated with like reward and happiness.
Yeah.
For I don't know, as pretty much until the last 2 decades, that's what everybody thought it was all about. We're starting to find out it's that happiness and the reward is more about serotonin. Okay, so when it comes to your dopaminergic system, dopamine, like I said, was a messenger, sends all these messages down all these axons, and then serotonin gets kicked in at some point. So they kind of happen simultaneously when you're in a situation where dopamine's going off. What we're starting to understand is that it's actually about pursuit and completion. Dopamine is what motivates us to go do things. And that's why it got confused with happiness and reward, because it's happening at the same time. Like if you think about it, you get a kick of dopamine that says it's time to go eat. Like your body knows it's time to eat. There's this communication that goes on. And it goes, how do we get this guy off the couch to grab those potato chips? Hit him with the dopamine. He gets up, he grabs potato chips. He's eating the potato chips. He starts getting that rush of serotonin. It's also interesting. You get dopamine twice when you eat, which is why eating disorders become a thing. Yeah, you get dopamine as you're eating it, and then also when it's actually being digested.
Okay.
And another thing too is, interestingly, dopamine is created in the stomach from gut flora and fauna. So yeah, so when you have no probiotics, no prebiotics going on, it can be difficult. Your food can impact your dopamine is what I'm saying, like what you're actually eating. So when we're talking about it being about pursuit instead of completion, think about it from like an evolutionary aspect, because what happens is every time you pursue something that is involved in procreation, your own satisfaction, and when I say satisfaction, I mean like food, water, shelter, finding a mate, defending yourself, defending your mate, defending your family, dopamine gets dumped to remind us that what we did was important. That's what it's all about. You find a watering hole, huge rush of dopamine, so that the next time you're in that area, you remember, oh, if I go over there, there's water. Or if I go over there, there's food. That's really what the dopamine is about. It motivates us and reminds us that wherever we're at, whatever we're doing, did result in a reward. It's not about the reward. It's about reminding us that the reward exists if we do the work. Okay. Now, where does alcohol come into this? It initially boosts dopamine. It's an exogenous source of dopamine, which means we experience dopamine at a higher level than we would naturally. But here's where it gets kind of insidious. Our brains are smart. Our body's smart. It realizes that if it has more dopamine than it normally would have, it doesn't have to make it anymore. It doesn't have to spend all this time trying to, have a baseline dopamine level, because Dillon's he's gonna drink some Black Velvet tonight. Don't worry about it. He'll get to it, right?
Yeah.
So our baseline dopamine levels drop, and on top of that, the actual receptor sites start to diminish as well. They'll grow back. I mean, all this stuff will grow back as you get sober. Your dopamine will balance out again. But the way to kind of think about it is as if you didn't have A, electricity in your house, and B, enough outlets, even if you had the electricity. That's kind of what's going on. That's why you don't have the motivation. You just don't have the power to move. And even if you had the power, you have nowhere to plug it in.
Yeah.
Also, when it comes to the motivation to quit drinking, which sucks, you don't have the motivation to try to get better. And then lastly, I'm sorry, this one's taking a little longer. What dopamine fasting actually is. And it's so some people in Silicon Valley took it way far, as in like, don't exercise, fast from food, fast from technology, all these things to somehow reset your brain. And it's just not a thing. Like, that's just not how it works. Dopamine fasting is more about being mindful and self-aware of what these different things do to your reward system, and making smarter choices, especially in early recovery, because what you're trying to do, dopamine is like a teeter-totter or a seesaw. If you get an anticipatory dopamine rush, pops that seesaw up. If you do not comply, okay, because like I said, it's about motivation. If you don't comply, it will flip it back down and it will cause pain. But it always tries to motivate first with pleasure, because we are more apt to act under pleasure versus pain, okay? So you want to level that out. Like that's why when you first get sober, you're experiencing dysphoria, which is just like everything sucks, like extreme depression, or anhedonia, where you don't feel anything.
Yeah.
And it has to do with the fact that teeter-totter's just it's all messed up, right?
Yeah.
So what you want to do when it comes to dopamine fasting is you want to be getting it from more natural sources, because evolutionarily we aren't prepared to be looking at these devices because they're not normal. We're not prepared to look at 100 different naked women because of pornography. We're not prepared to eat copious amounts of sugar because it's refined. We just biologically, we are not prepared to handle those things, and our brain's not either. So we want to avoid those things as much as possible. I don't mean put your phone down for a month and don't pick it back up. I mean, don't get sucked into Facebook, right? So we're going to want to avoid things like excessive sugar, drugs, or alcohol, binging on technology, whether it's video games, TV, social media. Essentially, you want to avoid things that make you feel a sense of accomplishment when you haven't done anything. That's like the biggest key takeaway here. It's like you get on your phone, you scroll through Facebook a little bit, and you feel like you've connected socially, but you haven't. And it's destructive. Okay. What you do want to do though, is you want to spend time getting positive sources of dopamine. So that can be done through like learning new things, being creative, spending time in nature. This one's one of my favorites, listening to music. They did studies. If you're listening to music and it gives you like goosebumps, goose pimples, chills, whatever you want to call it, that's actually your body releasing dopamine at that point. It usually has to do with, I talked about how dopamine has to do with memory. So that music is tied to a positive memory, where there was some sort of reward at the end. So boom, there you go. Exercising is huge. That's why it's like kind of central to my program. Completing tasks, but not completing it, working through the task, and laughing, and probably everybody's favorite, having sex with your partner. That I'm not telling people to go out and be like super promiscuous and chase it, because that's an unhealthy behavior as well. But having a healthy amount of sex is a good call. So there you go. The reason that we do this is because we want that baseline dopamine to come back to normal. I mean, we
Yeah.
want it to where you can experience a normal high and a normal low, and it's not up, down, left, right, all that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean,
Does
that's kind of it, man.
I like it? Does alcohol destroy the probiotics, the biomes in our stomach?
Dude, yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Like
Well,
there's
well, my question is because you said dopamine's kind of created in the stomach, and if alcohol's killing all the good shit in your stomach, there has to be a decrease in dopamine
so there's some
production. Your body's not producing it on its own.
totally. Totally. I mean, there's multiple reasons as to, because it's our bodies are complex organisms, right? There's
Yeah.
multiple reasons as to why we have less dopamine while we're consuming alcohol. That's one of them. There's actually some really compelling research about using probiotics as an alcohol cessation drug. It's
Oh, cool.
crazy, dude. It's super cool. Yeah, like they found that the more in balance our gut biome is, the
Hmm.
less likely we are to have cravings. It's cool. It's really cool. Like I mean, it's like part of the reason we get addicted is we're just way out of balance. Like that's part of my program, is helping people come back into balance with themselves and the world around them and all that kind of
Yeah.
thing. The more out of balance you are with society and with your body, it's really easy to fall into things, right?
Yeah.
Lack of connection results in addiction, including the connection we have to ourselves. So,
Yeah. I, I,
that's
I really like the part you said, like the technology use, scrolling through, getting a dopamine from something that's kind of useless.
yeah,
And that made so much sense because I was talking to my girlfriend yesterday, and she's like, one of the things I've always really loved about you is that no matter what, when it's just me and you or when we're hanging out, your phone is never around and your entire business is on your phone. She said, you've never ignored me for TikTok or Facebook or anything. It's always right there. And that's what I preach to my clients. Like, you need to connect. And it is a dopamine thing. Like, you're associating good feelings with a positive outcome of being with your partner,
Totally.
being around them, doing those things
Totally.
instead of the phone in those instances.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, part of the problem is that, so this concept of like manifest destiny that we have as Westerners, it's hardwired. We are hardwired to seek novelty, like for a reason, right? Like that's how we've been able to survive as a species, as we go out, claim more land, find new things to eat, and more mates and all that kind of stuff. Mostly the mates thing, so that you're not mating the same pool. It forces you to get out and spread, right? Our phones just let us do that, like on autopilot. You can pop your phone out, you can look at Facebook, and all of a sudden you have 100 friends that you're not even near, or people you've never even seen before. All those things, and it triggers your brain. Can't tell the difference. Like it does and doesn't know all at the same time. Like that's not a person you're actually talking to. You know, I'm sure you've seen there's communication theories that talk about that, like how you can have almost the exact same kind of communication and relationship with someone you've never even met. You know, we all make it up in our brains. You know, at the end of the day, our experience is only occurring up here, even though we're viewing it and interacting out here. Right.
I want you to take this one because it goes right with it, and I like it. So if you're an introvert, are you more likely to be an alcoholic?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Really?
Because there's the other thing too. Most introverts don't really want to be introverts, whether they want to or not. I want to point that out, though. There's a distinction, because society doesn't want you to be an introvert. That's the weird thing about it. Society wants, like, people think it's weird if you just want to hang out by yourself, right? So what does alcohol do? Lets you become an extrovert, like just that fast, flip a switch, right? So you go ahead and you become an extrovert for the evening because you've had a couple drinks. The other thing too is, we talked about previously, I think we talked about on the show, it might have just been with a client, but we're talking about how the gap between drinking in a bar, there's rules. At a bar, you're allowed to get wasted. Like, that's normal. Like, that's okay. I'm to a point. I mean, they'll ask you to leave at some point. At home, that's usually not okay behavior. In COVID, that line got blurred. So people started drinking at home. So you take that same model of cognition and behavior, and you apply it to someone who hangs out by themselves, but then starts to drink. Then they're going to drink at home by themselves, and it becomes super duper easy to just fall in a hole in a bottle all by yourself at home. So,
dude, I want you to write this one down or take a note. I want to hear your COVID story of getting sober, because that was in the beginning. That was in the early days of your sobriety.
Yeah, dude.
I want to hear some of that, because you talk about blurred lines, and COVID was like surrounded by drinking.
Well,
like, that was the thing.
Let's just put it this way. Every tool I was given to get sober no longer applied. Like, every rule that they gave me as I'm getting sober no longer worked. So there's a preview for those of you that are here about what it's going to be like, because I actually would love to tell that story, what it was like.
I want to hear it.
It was crazy. I mean, oh man, I remember, like, this won't give any of it away, but there was this guy, Scott, that I knew at the time, and he'd watch the news every morning, and this was before COVID was COVID, and I picked up early on in my sobriety how important it was for me to not consume the news. So I'd always just kind of poke fun at, he and I got along well enough. I'd poke fun at him, and I'd be like, so what am I supposed to be scared of today, Scott? You know, because, like, that's what the news is telling me, what I need to be afraid of today. And I knew that wasn't good for my mental health, so I just didn't watch it. But the COVID thing's like ramping up, and then it's a thing, like, then it's real. And it was just like, oh my God, you know? And then what do? I mean, that's for, I guess, interestingly enough, I might be able to tie it into the next segment I give, because you're next. But
I like it.
Yeah, I'll figure something out, man. I'll get that in. That's a good story to tell. I hadn't even thought about how good of a story that probably is for people.
Yeah. Yeah, because there were so many variables, and I think relationship stories around that time, because divorces increased, because you're stuck around this person that you weren't prioritizing. You didn't even know who they were, right? So the rules of the relationship, just like the rules of getting sober, were thrown out the window.
You know, it's interesting because that makes me think about. I had a thought earlier when you were talking about the books that you were talking about, where you get these books off Amazon that are like
Uh-huh.
making your relationship fun. Dude, I as a kid received this concept from my parents that like things like that were like gimmicky or
Yeah.
existed for like a relationship that's about to fail or something.
Yeah.
And I don't see it that way. I'm gonna blame you a lot for that shift in my perspective. Like I'm okay with like you take that blame, you earned it, it's
I'll take
good.
it.
Because it's like I now understand that kind of talks a little bit about the insecurity in their relationship. We're not here to talk about that, but what it tells me is like they weren't prioritizing their relationship. Because if
Yeah.
you're really like, I was just thinking, I was like, man, I really do want to do that with my wife because like all I care about is my business and my clients and my family, not
Yeah.
particularly in that order, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, why I don't play video games. For those of you that don't know me, that's not I do like very very minimally.
Yeah.
It's not good for me. Um, so I'm like, well, all I have to do is take care of my family and my business. So why the hell don't I have this like, you know, constant game that I'm playing with my wife
Hmm.
that is like a long campaign called a
Yeah.
relationship
Yeah.
that you're taking part in. And sometimes you bring in cool tools to make it more exciting. Like, doesn't mean your relationship sucks. It means you're trying to make it better than it already is. Like,
Yeah.
how's that for a perspective? You
Dude, I
know?
love it. I love it. And that's exactly how I want every one of my clients to approach their relationship. That's the end goal, is to get them to realize this is something you should be doing consistently. It's not that it's bad, it's that you should have been doing this from day one
The whole time. Yeah.
the whole time.
I guess I owe you some money because I just ascended through your through I've now reached maximum coaching from Ryan level and I didn't pay a dime. I just
Well,
was on the show with him.
I've,
Uh,
I've got plenty more for you, man. We haven't got to the intimacy. We haven't got to the continued development.
totally. And I real quick, I want to give a shout out. That's David the Georgian.
Yeah,
So that's cool, man. I love seeing all of you guys that keep coming back, you
I
know.
do too.
It's we're
Nicole.
like family. It's
Yeah,
cool.
it's like Nicole, Jacqueline, Jess,
Yep.
David, everybody. It's becoming a really cool community.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's all about. So I
We
think
are at
we're there, aren't
we're
we?
we're there. We're at the top of the hour.
I hope you guys enjoyed the show today. I tried to keep the dopamine fasting one as surface level as possible. It's crazy. The more you dig into it, it's like that's a can of worms, a can of worms.
Yeah,
So I did everything I could to like make it make sense for everybody. Um, thank y'all for being on the show.
I like it.
Really appreciate it.
I'd like if you'd create kind of a cheat sheet for that, kind of a worksheet. I think
Yeah.
that'd be a cool. I think that'd be something cool. Just a little freebie.
Well, like a list of the good sources and a list of the bad sources, that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah,
here's what you want, here's what you want to avoid. Here's, you know, practical
yeah,
ways to approach this kind of
yeah,
thing. Because like the thing they were doing in Silicon Valley is insane. Like, I mean, they'd be on like try to be on technology fasts for like a week at a time. And it's like, I can't do that. I mean, I couldn't service my clients. My wife calls me every day on my phone, you
yeah.
know, to let me know how we talk about her day on her way to pick up the kids. We talk about what her day was like. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not giving that up, dude. I don't even care. Like,
Yeah.
dopamine be damned. I'm not missing out on that phone call.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just, you know, they took it a little far. So yeah, what do we have? What is your segment next episode next week?
Oh, we have creating a shared vision for the future.
Yeah. Relationship stuff for you guys.
We'll talk about that. Also, anybody in here, please join us tonight for the other live.
Yeah. Yeah. Tonight, 10 Central. The other thing too, it won't be the next Friday segment, but the Friday segment after that. Ryan and I are always trying to build value. Like that's really what this is all about. Like what can we give you guys to make you prepared in recovery and in relationships? So we're going to flip flop. When we give a segment, we're also going to have some sort of giveaway at the end of that segment. So look forward to
Yes.
that.
Hit us up with any ideas or things that could be helpful for you that we could give you.
Yeah, tools for everybody.
Yeah, tools for everybody. We'll make sure to try to make that happen as best we can.
Yeah. So I think that's it for today, guys. Looking forward to the group that we'll see tonight. It was a pleasure hanging out with all of you guys this afternoon. Until next time, we will see you later.
See y'all.